Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we explore the future and what this means for your leadership. We ask the big questions. What's happening on the horizon? What does this mean for us? And most importantly, what skills do I need now for leadership of the future? It's time to explore. Let's go.
Hey, it's Zoe, and we're here this week with a solosode. Hurrah! Me and you riffing on some stuff I've been thinking about. So I've have a look at the amazing guests we've had on the show and the themes that are coming up. And the overarching theme for this quarter of content has been virtues, ethics, and character in leadership. And sometimes we've stuck to that topic, and otherwise it's been offshoots of that. In the last few weeks, we've looked at productivity issues with John Green and Donna McGeorge around ChatGPT, which was really cool. It's very cool. And Brandon White around strategy, about solving people's problems is the first question you need to answer when you're developing strategy. Then we looked at influence topics with Catherine Lazaruk and the ethics around executive presence and to challenge that. And we talked with Laura Fredericks and her amazing book, Hard Ask. Loved that book. Thought it was awesome. How do we actually influence people? And the last two guests, Tom Fox around compliance and ESG, and Chris Laudenslager around doing social good. Essentially, I think the themes over those handful of guests have been about getting stuff done with an amazing creative assistant. Thank you, ChatGPT. Get what you want through influence. And lastly, the ongoing theme throughout all of my work is be a good human. Be a good human. Well, let me give you some updates first, and then we'll get into the meat of what I want to talk about today, which is all about power and wisdom. My updates on Planet Zoe, but first we do Planet Human. Planet Human. Really cool technology out there. So I've been taking a future flow, and that is with Stephen Kotler at the Flow Research Collective. And one of their guests, Dr. Michael Manino, talked about electroencephalography. That's the last time I'm going to say that. Otherwise, it's going to be known as EEG. Basically, it measures brain waves, and some really cool experiments they're doing with brain waves and AI includes these ones. First job they did was they created some faces with artificial intelligence. Then they put some people in the EEG machine to read their brain waves, had them look at these AI designed faces, which look like human faces, they look real, and read the brainwave output. After that, AI reconstructed what the people were looking at based on the brainwave mapping that they did. So let me just repeat that, describe it again. So the people go into this little machine, they look at these bunch of faces, they've got a machine that's looking at their brainwave activity, and the AI goes, their brainwaves are doing this. This means they're looking at and their brainwaves are interacting with such that they are looking at these particular images. And they replicated the faces. Is that just not mind-blowing? They're basically mind reading. Now, let's say it's pretty crude, like the reproduction is not exact. It's a little bit fuzzy around the edges. Another experiment they did was getting people to do similar thing in the EEG machine, watch movies and monitor and record their brainwaves and reconstruct what they are saying. It's still blurry and not quite exact, but it'll only get better. It's still pretty crude. The implications of this are huge. That means we'll be able to record people's dreams, reproduce people's dreams. So we are one step closer to recording people's consciousness, either in real time or in parts of their consciousness. It has huge mental health applications, so we can look at what's bothering people on Earth, and they're using this kind of technology to detect early onset Alzheimer's and that kind of stuff. And it can also predict if you are going into a depressive state, that kind of things. So it can be used for treatment and diagnostics for mental health issues, understanding our personality and our consciousness. It can also be applied towards developing customized learning assistance by understanding how your brainwave patterns, how you react with certain materials, will make us, you could then have customized learning platforms adapt how they're delivering information for you to help you learn languages or learn any particular new skill, say, for example. And my favorite, of course, is the application for computer-brain interface or brain-computer interface. So getting the little implant that can interact with your brainwaves. Yeah, of course, there's huge amounts of alarm bells going around with that one, but I think there's huge opportunities as well. And not quite a spoiler alert, but we talk about that, or I talk about it in my follow-up book, my sequel, Olympus Bound. So that is really cool planet human stuff, the EEG encephalography. I said I wasn't going to say it, but I did it anyway because it actually is kind of a fun word to say. Encephalography. Okay, there you go. 3 times said. And mapping brain waves to reproduce what you're thinking. Woohoo! Very cool. Well, on Planet Zoe, my updates are Terra Blanca is back with the typesetter with corrections, which means this is like the last final process before I can upload it on all the websites and get it available to you. The audiobook is finished. I can't release the audiobook until I have the book and ebook all ready, and then it'll all be out, and you can get access to both the ebook and the audiobook for free when you sign up to Bookish. That is my occasional e-journal on books, all things books, my books, other people's books, where you can sign up at zoerouth.com, click on books, find Bookish, sign up there, and when Terra Blanca is ready, ebook and audiobook, you can access for free. Haha, yes, it is good to be on Planet Zoe. The other update is Olympus Bound, the sequel to the Olympus project. I am actually 2 scenes away from completing the very rough first draft of the book, and it is due now to the editor. It's supposed to be due in June. It is now due at the editor first week of September. So he had delays, which has benefited me because now I have more chance to polish the book up. So that's pretty exciting. That book, the sequel, won't be ready earliest end of the year, more likely beginning of the year, because editing takes a really long time. Okay, well, that's enough of my updates. What I've been reading, reading rather than listening to, reading Pierce Brown's Lightbringer. Now, Lightbringer is a sci-fi fantasy, I guess, a sci-fi fantasy combo. His series, the Red Rising series, of which this is, I think, the 7th book, is awesome. It's primitive in terms of the human buttons that it presses. It's all about power, survival, struggle, good, evil, complex human emotions. I love it. It's gritty. He's constructed an interesting society that has all to do with the exercise of power. Who's got it? Who keeps it? How you maintain it? How you have unhealthy hierarchies and how you can smash those hierarchies apart. So Pierce Brown's Lightbringer, I'm almost finished that book, and I'm sad because it took ages to get this sequel out. So his next one, I hope, will come not too long afterwards. What I'm listening to, audiobook version, just finished listening to Killer in the Kremlin by investigative reporter John Sweeney. Oh, it's chilling. It's all about Putin's war on the Ukraine, his rise to power, how he has propagated, I think maybe that's the right word. He has been responsible for murders and poisonings and this really horrible, stupid war in the Ukraine. And what that is all about. So John Sweeney is a gritty hack, as he called himself, and he is pretty good, actually. Like, there's a lot of speculation in the book, but he's clear to say this is speculation and this is the evidence. So he stacks up the evidence to lead to the speculation. It's not just pulling something from the ether, but it's well researched, and it is chilling to know that we've got someone like that at the helm in Russia. Further to power mongering, we have Crossing the Line, which is what I'm now listening to by Nick McKenzie, Australian journalist. And Crossing the Line is about the story of Ben Robert Smith, our fallen war hero. And I'm just 30 chapters in, but it is depressing as well. So it is depressing because the use and abuse of power is just all too familiar. Whether it's in fiction like Pierce Brown, or whether it's in another country across the way in Russia, or whether it's right here at home in a more close to home kind of environment, the abuse of power is rife. And as leaders, we need to come to a really healthy relationship with power, as well as identify those who are susceptible to seize it and to abuse it, and to note and do something about the corruption of power when we see it at play. Big spotlight on the U.S. and all the loss of rights that are happening across the United States, and the suppression of information and truth, and the rise of the despot known as Trump. So we have a lot of work to do in our own backyard, though, to be mindful of how we are wielding power, and whether we're doing it well or whether we are not. So I feel this creative juice coming now to write my next non-fiction book. And I talked about this, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I just it wasn't doing it for me. But now I feel the time is coming. Next year, I'll probably write the book on power and wisdom. It won't be called that, or maybe it will be. And I think it'll be essential work for leaders to understand how they can grow power, wield power safely, and also challenge power when it needs to be challenged. One of the questions I got asked by a listener, Joe, hat tip to you, Joe. She said, what's changing with executive presence? And I think this came out of the interview with Catherine Lazaruk. And she says, is there anything new in executive presence? Of what's the current thinking around this? And I thought a lot about this question. And I think the first response to what is executive presence is the art of subconscious influence. Art of subconscious influence. And I think that is the important element to pick up on from a, first of all, tactical point of view. So if we want to be influential, then we want to activate subconscious influence. How do we do that? We play to existing cultural norms. That is what all the traditional or conventional advice is around executive presence. Things like, if you're a woman, stand up straight, stand your ground, dress professionally, deepen your voice so you don't have a high voice, because lower voices are felt to be more influential. Don't rise up at the end of a sentence. You talk down at the end of a sentence. These types of things are cultural norms that are really mapped out and ingrained in us. So as a tactic to become more influential, play to them. And I think my favorite expert on this topic is Vanessa Van Edwards. Her latest book, Cues, is all about how to use voice and words and body positioning for influence. And I think she does an excellent job on that. So play to the current cultural norms is the first answer around what's not changing around executive presence. My interview with Catherine Lazaruk had me thinking about, because she challenged biases in this whole idea of executive presence, like the conventional advice is be more manly, essentially, in some ways. And she said, well, it's up to us as leaders to lean in hard to our cultural biases. And if we dismiss someone because they are not following those conventional norms of influence, they're quiet speakers. And Megumi Miki's, oh my God, is that her last name? Megumi, I just know her, Megumi, I think that is her last name. Her book, Quietly Powerful, speaks to that. How you can be authentic and not somebody who needs to be an extrovert swinging from the rafters, and that you can exercise power and influence quietly in your own way. It's a two-way street, though. We need, as leaders, to make room for those people who do not fit the conventional image of somebody who is powerful and influential. People who are quieter, say, for example, or people who have an accent. And I caught myself out, actually, listening to a reporter on the radio, and they had a really strong accent. How would I describe it? A bogan accent. That's what they would call it in Australia. A really twangy Australian accent. And all my subconscious biases came really conscious, because I was dismissing them as not that educated and therefore not that reputable or believable. And I thought, whoa, hang on a minute. And I had to really fight my conscious urge to dismiss anything they were saying and lean into the content of their message. That's an example of catching ourselves in our own thinking. Because our System 1 brain, as Daniel Kahneman talked about in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is our quick thinking, quick assessment brain. So we're familiar with all these patterns, and it helps us make judgments and conclusions about threats and friends really quickly. That's its purpose. And sometimes we get it wrong, as in exactly what I just did there, thinking about somebody as bogan, not being credible or reputable. So we need to be mindful of our System 1 brain and challenge it to think a little bit more deeply. Yeah, so we have to fight our brain a lot in this way. So to answer Joe's question, because I haven't really answered it, what's changing or what is not changing, I think you can actively use the current cultural norms to be influential, and at the same time buck against those, because they can be patriarchal, they can be systemically suppressive, and we need to think about that. We need to challenge that. And so we can challenge our thinking and our biases. What is not changing when it comes to executive presence and influence in general is this: strength of character, which comes back to our theme for this quarter. Strength of character will always cut through the noise. When we are somebody who stands by our values, when we are somebody who makes a stand on issues, when we are somebody who can question and ask and be curious and lean into challenges and be open to feedback and to question perspective and to seek greater truth, that is a strength of character. When we have clarity of purpose, when we know the kind of difference that we want to make, when we know what we show up to do is meaningful and important, that is resonant and resonating with others. It is extremely attractive and influential. Our degree of attention to others is also never changing. It's evergreen when it comes to executive presence. All this comes down to, if you are thinking about how can I be more influential, how can I develop my executive presence? 3 things: be, think, do. It's the quality of your energy, how you self-manage, how you show up, how you radiate out into the world. Your thinking, it's the depth of your thinking. Are you thinking far, deep, and wide? Are you thinking about the complexity, the context, the repercussions, far and wide? And the doing part, how effective is your action? Are you making best use of your time and energy? Are you prioritizing effectively? Are you using artificial intelligence tools to fast track your productivity? Okay, wow. That's the end of my notes. I was just getting on a roll there. Basically, what it comes down to, sum up this quarter of interviews and thoughts and reflections about where we're up to as leaders. I think you would be well advised when it comes to influence, when it comes to being a leader with virtue, with ethics, and with character, is to just be a good human. Be kind, be courageous, and keep going. That's my hat tip to all you leaders out there who are doing the hard yards on days that feel tough, in circumstances that feel unrewarding, and where you feel like you're constantly battling uphill. Life is meant for living well, and you as a leader have a right to feel happy and fulfilled. And by being a good human, a kind human, a courageous human that keeps on keeping on, you're adding to the wonderful cacophony of, it's not actually a cacophony, wonderful orchestra, the wonderful orchestra of life that is us on this beautiful little pale blue dot in the sky. So thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. I'd love for you to forward this episode or any of the episodes to somebody you care about who would think would benefit from hearing the insights that we share on the show. If you've got any requests or suggestions for guests, I would love those as well. Email me at zoe@zoerouth.com. In the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. To find out more about leadership of the future or to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.